Good morning. We're going to talk about Unit 7. Um, this is about the Black feminist movement. And there's 3 separate thoughts for that, and that is impossible to separate the structure from the content of the thought from the historical and material conditioning shaping that the lives of the producers. This is thought while the Black feminists thought that it may be recorded by others, it is produced by a Black woman. Number 2, it assumes a Black woman possesses a unique standpoint on a perspective of their experiences, and that what will be of certain commonalities of perception shared by a Black woman as a group. While living life as a Black woman may produce certain commonalities of outlook, the diversity of class, religion, sexual orientation shaping individual Black women's lives has resulted in different expressions of these common themes. The Black feminist thought contains observation and interpretations about Afro-American womanhood that describes and explains different expressions and common themes. So then we go on to talk about sapphires, was a label that was put on assertive women to ridicule some of them. Some women would counsel African American women so that they would not get the sapphire stereotype. Some of these women would emasculate Black men with frequent verbal assaults. And they were stereotypically feminine. We talked about a mammy, which is one of the most persuasive images of a Black woman in the South. Her role was domestic service, characterized by long hours of work with little or no financial compensation. She was constant self-sacrificing, continues to represent the economic and working conditions to represent poor Black women. We talked about the Jezebel, which was a bad Black girl, or basically the slut of Black women. They were very promiscuous. Halo, get out of the way. And they were often engaging in sexual activity. They became sexually aroused with little foreplay. They would have sometimes anxiety, feelings of inadequacy. We talked about the white feminism, which is a brand of feminism that minimizes or forgets or willfully ignores the experiences of women of color. It looks at womanhood through a beige-colored middle-class lens and ignores many ways that women's issues specifically affect Black women or any other race. The whites are positioned as standard and normally on the forefront of conversation about gender, sexual violence, workplace violence, and just leave the women of color in the shadows. We talked about school push-out, which is a way that the school approaches discipline, often pushing out young people and through suspensions, expulsions, and arrest. This is through a zero-tolerance policy. These students typically fall behind academically, drop out, or become involved in the juvenile justice system. Students of color or in the gay and lesbian community, disabilities are pushed out faster. Black students are suspended and expelled 3 times greater than white students. 70% arrested are Black and Latino. We talked about the school to prison pipeline, which is a process through which students are pushed out from the schools or straight into the prison systems. Normally, once they're pushed out, they get in contact or get in trouble and end up being arrested and have contact with law enforcement. They get put into the juvenile justice system, which then ends up sending them eventually into the prison systems. We need harsher punishments from the zero tolerance policy, having resource officers on campus. Funding for incarceration has more than doubled, while higher education has been raised by only 21%. This primarily affects Black students, which can be seen in representations of jails and prisons And I work in the juvenile justice system, and I can tell you that is very apparent. We talked about Black masculinity, which is perception, expectation, and representation of all of these categories interviewed together created an extended definition of Black masculinity. It says that it is hard to talk about a Black man without having stereotypical definitions in that. There's a lot of negative connotations attached to Black men. There's some white men that fear it. There's some Black men that worship the masculinity. The media portrays Black men as violent, hypersexual, and incompetent beings. And the thing that I found the most interesting and would like to know more about is the school push out, because like I said, I work in the juvenile justice system and I see this a lot, and the crimes that these kids come in for, sometimes I don't agree that they need to be in this kind of place. And I also found it was really interesting about the Mammy and the Sapphire and the Jezebel. I've heard those terms before, but I'd never really had a definition for them. And kind of the white and Black feminism movements. I don't really classify myself as neither or as a white feminist, but it was really kind of interesting to read about along with the Black feminists. So I look forward to reading more on all of those topics. And so, oh yeah, and we talked about deficit thinking. Sorry about that, I almost forgot that. Which refers to the notions that students or particularly low-income minority students fail in school because these students and families have lack of motivations, intelligence, inadequate home socialization. So that's just basically saying that because they're poor, they can't do well in school, and that's not a good enough reason. We need to make it a better situation for poor families, whether they're Black, white, pink, or purple. Thank you. Have a great day.